When you think of Bob Dylan's musical style, what typically comes to mind? Maybe a prominent acoustic guitar and harmonica? A melancholy atmosphere? The genres of folk, blues, and rock? Any of these would be accurate guesses, but Dylan's musical style would change often throughout his over 60-year-long career. There have been albums that capture the styles of country, gospel, pop, and even the American Songbook. But to me, no album of his was as musically bold or adventurous as 1976's Desire. And in today's video, we'll journey through the album chronologically and examine why this album is seen as one of Bob Dylan's greatest works. This is DES. Before we talk about the album, we should cover the important lead up to its creation. On January 20th, 1975, Bob Dylan released one of, if not the most acclaimed album he ever made, Blood on the Tracks. While it initially received mixed reviews from critics, it received massive chart success, having the album get to number 1 on the Billboard 200 and going on to sell millions of copies. The album had single-handedly proven that Bob Dylan was not a relic of the 60s, but rather an artist beyond that era. This would be proven time and time again with masterpieces like Time Out of Mind and Tempest, but it was first established here. Half a year later, in the summer of 1975, Dylan conceived of a new idea for touring. Instead of playing large venues, he thought of performing at smaller and more intimate places to connect more with the audience. He formed a group of performers including Roger McGuinn, frontman of the Byrds, Joni Mitchell, Ramblin' Jack Elliott, Joan Baez, Mick Ronson, Allen Ginsberg, and many others. He called the tour the Rolling Thunder Revue, embracing a retro style that brings to mind the old traveling circuses and medicine shows of an older America. Dylan would use the band that backed him during the Rolling Thunder Revue to record his next album, that being Desire. The album would release on January 5th, 1976, to a positive reaction and massive chart success. The album would go to number 1 on the Billboard 200 and go on to sell millions of copies. And now that we know what led up to the album, let's begin. The album opens with a whirlwind, the 8.5-minute epic Hurricane. The first lines of the song establish a grander scope than usual Dylan outings.
Pistol shots ring out in a barroom night. Enter Betty Valentine from the upper hall.
The opening lyrics read like stage directions in a play script. This was drawn from the influence of Jacques Lévy, the co-writer of the song. Yes, for the first time in Dylan's recording career, a co-writer is featured on all but 2 songs on the album. Lévy was a theater director who later started a songwriting collaboration with Roger McGuinn. Through McGuinn, Dylan met Lévy and collaborated on the songs that would make up the Desire album. I believe it was Lévy's theater influence that gave the songs on Desire a more structured narrative and epic scope. Sung over a driving rhythm, Dylan tells
the story of the hurricane, the man the authorities came to blame.
The Hurricane was the nickname of Rubin Carter, a boxer who had been charged with murder and imprisoned. After reading Carter's autobiography, Bob Dylan believed in his innocence and visited him. In the years that followed Carter's imprisonment, evidence of faulty judicial practices, racially motivated decisions, and dubious eyewitness testimonies were revealed. Dylan felt that he needed to expose this spectacle of injustice in the form of a protest song. Earlier in his career, protest songs were commonly found on his albums, but ever since the turn to rock and roll music, the politics had become more thematic and subtle rather than literal. But in this song, the protest edge returns with a fiery passion. There are few songs from Dylan with vocal performances and energy that are this spirited and ferocious, but it's a proper attitude in the context of the song. This opening tale also introduces a subject that serves as one of the 2 thematic cores of the album, the love of the outlaw. America's love of the outlaw is a deep and rich part of our country's culture. There has always been a cultural fascination with the infamous outlaws of America, whether it be Billy the Kid, Al Capone, Bonnie and Clyde, among many others. I believe our interest in outlaws is based on what they represent as icons, the ultimate symbols of rebellion, individualism, and freedom. Maybe this has something to do with America's beginning, as the country was founded in the era of the American Revolution. Since America was born of rebellion, it is in our nature to root for the underdog, and this fundamental ideal is expertly created throughout this album. While Rubin Carter was not a criminal similar to the ones previously mentioned, he was an unjustly persecuted outlaw, and over the course of 8 minutes and 33 seconds we are told his story with a passion and energy that leaves all who listen to it amazed yet disgusted at the injustice presented. Musically, the song is like nothing ever seen from Bob Dylan before. The song bursts with a driving drum and bass rhythm, huge cymbal crashes, and a ripping lead violin. While it was not the first Dylan album to feature a violin, see Blue Moon on Self-Portrait, it was the first one to use it consistently on each track. The music throughout the album reflects a more intrepid and worldly style that perfectly suits the stories being told. The narrative takes place all over the world, and the music always sets the tone properly. The music and themes established on Hurricane continue into the next song. In this song, we hear the tale of a man's adventure to find treasure, but all you can think about is his love, Isis. Lyrically, the song reads like an action-adventure story. Our narrator leaves his wife Isis, who he recently married, to ride off into the wild unknown country to search for his desire. He arrives in a high place of darkness and light and goes into a laundry. A man approaches him and asks if he would like to join him on a journey to find treasure. The narrator agrees and they leave immediately. They find a pyramid embedded in ice and uncover the entrance. The man dies, but the narrator decides to continue on. He finds a tomb, but there's nothing inside. After this, he goes all the way back to Isis to stay. The beginning of the last verse has always stood out.
Isis, oh Isis, yeah, a mystical child. What drives me to you is what drives me insane.
This line summarizes the entire song. I believe what he is talking about, what drives him to Isis, is simply desire. His desire drove him to take a long journey that did nothing more than waste his time, but it also drove him to find and come back to Isis. This idea that the simple feeling of desire can be both the reason for the greatness in life as well as an individual's ruin is a fascinating and true fact of the world. This song also introduces the second thematic core of the album, the love of romance. Romance is a recurring subject throughout, and it serves to fulfill the name of the album. I believe this song also serves as a smaller version of the entire album's story. Throughout the album, Dylan regales us with tales of bandits, treasure, and faraway lands, but at the end returns to the great love of his life. But until then, we're still on a globe-trotting adventure, and next we'll arrive in...
I like to spend some time in Mozambique. The sunny sky is aqua blue.
Suddenly, we're whisked away to Mozambique. The song's playful rhythm conveys a bustling yet upbeat atmosphere, like the narrator is walking through Mozambique with a wide-eyed and carefree attitude. With its layered instrumental style, the music brings to mind images of busy outdoor towns, dancing, and a lively aura. Joining Dylan on vocals on this song is Emmylou Harris, whose voice will accompany Dylan throughout the rest of the album. Vocal duets on Bob Dylan albums were rare up to this point, but I always find them pleasant changes of pace, whether it be Girl from the North Country on Nashville Skyline, or If Dogs Run Free on New Morning. Lyrically, our narrator describes a memorable trip to Mozambique where he falls for a woman that he ultimately must leave behind. Again, we're confronted with the beauty and loss of romance.
Your breath is sweet, with your eyes are like two jewels in the sky.
Musically, the song has a mysterious atmosphere created by a moody rhythm guitar, ringing finger cymbals, and a wailing violin accompaniment and a steady drum beat. This atmosphere is paired with one of the most impressive Dylan vocal performances on a studio album in my judgment. Lyrically, the song reads as a dialogue from a lover to his distant woman, the daughter of an outlaw. The song's narrator tells her that he does not sense an affection for him and must leave. He'll have one more cup of coffee before he goes to the valley below. There has been debate for decades as to the meaning of the chorus, but especially its final line.
One more cup of coffee before I go to the valley below.
Dylan himself described its place in the song. My feeling about the song is that the verses came from someplace else. It wasn't about anything, so this Valley Below thing became a fixture to hang it on. But Valley Below could mean anything. I believe that the meaning of the verses can be derived from the event that influenced the writing of the song. On his 34th birthday, Dylan visited a Romani celebration at Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer, France, and stayed for a week. The song was written after this and was used as a backdrop for the narrative. The narrator of the song is preoccupied with leaving for the valley below. By Dylan's admission, the phrase does not have any particular meaning, and is a stand-in for something greater. I believe that this valley below phrase refers to, yet again, desire. The word desire is defined as a strong want for something, but that something can be anything. Perhaps the vagueness of the chorus of the song is so undefined because the very nature of desire is undefined. We often feel a strong desire, but never determine the reason for it, and this song is the ultimate execution of that feeling.
Oh, sister, when I come to lie in your arms.
Side 1 of the album ends with Oh Sister. The song is musically emotional with a yearning violin, a slow but passionate drum beat, and a weepy harmonica. The song's lyrics are a simple desire for unity, love, and forgiveness. The song's narrator simply asks for kinship with his sister. He explains how they've been raised together from the cradle to the grave. The song has a religious through line with lines like,
To love and follow his direction. We died and were reborn and lived mysteriously stay.
The song ends with one of the most poetic and profound lines in Dylan's catalog.
Time is an ocean, but it ends at the shore. You may not see me tomorrow.
This verse is told so simply, but it only magnifies the importance of it. Time is often seen as an incredibly vast thing that goes on in all directions, but as the sea meets the shore, time comes to an end, and there is no guarantee that you won't leave this world alone. Side 2 opens with the 11-minute epic, Joey. The song was written as a tribute to the deceased gangster Crazy Joey Gallo. It tells his life story from birth to death. The song's instrumentation adds a grand, melodramatic atmosphere that perfectly suits the feelings that Dylan wants you to feel. The crashing cymbals, emotional violin, and passionate chorus give the song a Homeric quality. The song's lyrics describe Joey Gallo as a sort of anti-hero who was blown away by a corrupt system. This angle of the song connects it thematically with the album's introduction to the song, which had a very similar scenario. However, while Hurricane has aged into one of Dylan's most iconic and beloved songs, Joey has had a more complicated legacy. Both critics of the time and fans ever since have criticized the song's lyrics for romanticizing an individual who does not deserve pity. While it was later proven that the subject of Hurricane, Rubin Carter, was unfairly convicted, Joey Gallo, even at the time, was known for his violent and immoral actions. Dylan believed him to be a kind of hero or underdog who did what he did because it was the kind of life that he had only ever known. This is told in the second line of the chorus of the song.
King of the street, child of pain.
As clay can be malleable, so was the mind of a young Joe Gallo. Dylan describes actions by Joey that showed a more positive side to his character, like how he was averse to guns, how he refused to kill hostages, or how he shielded his family from the bullets that brought him down. Actions like this have been disputed and argued over their legitimacy for decades, but there was no review more infamous than a Village Voice review of the Desire album by music journalist Lester Bangs. He was extremely sour on the song and believed Dylan to be purposefully falsifying information. At the end of his scathing review, he asks the question, why would Dylan choose to write this song? Co-writer Jacques Levy would explain this to Bangs in an interview. Bob has always had a thing about outlaws, people on the outside of whatever side there was. Would you call John Wesley Harding a small-time hoodlum? I think calling Joey that is labeling someone unfairly, and Joey wasn't a psychopath either. He was just trying to build something, to help his people and family, and I don't mean family in the mafia sense. Yeah, he was a victim of society, of growing up poor, and if you look at the results of the Gallo-Profeci War, you'll find that it's never been proved that the Gallos killed anybody, but plenty of Joey's people got killed. This love of the outlaw has been a continuous subject throughout the album, and it reaches a peak on this song. This song shows a love for the outlaw to the point that many consider it to heavily romanticize the subject. I believe that the song's controversial legacy makes it more interesting and adds a new layer of intrigue to this album. The idea of the outlaw is an inherently controversial one, as rebelling against a greater power, whether it be for heroic or selfish reasons, requires disobedience. And for every outlaw, there is always a debate as to whether he was a hero or a villain, and this song represents that entirely within itself. And the defiant outlaw attitude continues on the next song.
No llores, querida, Dios nos liga, son ojos vertejos.
Romance in Durango tells the tale of a couple on the run in Durango, Mexico. The instrumentation of the song immerses the audience in a vibrant and beautiful Mexico with trumpeting accompaniment, a festive rhythm, an impassioned accordion, and fluttering guitar accents. The song serves as the ultimate union between the album's two thematic through lines, outlaws and romance, and feels like a joyous celebration of the two. Throughout the album, we've heard stories about outlaws, but this song is sung from the perspective of the outlaw. In another impressive vocal performance, Dylan tells the story of a couple on the run hoping to live a beautiful life in Durango. The inciting incident is told near the middle of the song. The narrator, one of the lovers, questions if he was the one to shoot his friend Ramon. Violent images of that incident still live inside his head.
Then I see the bloody face of Ramon.
And at the end of the song, the narrator is struck by a bullet fired from the high hills, and his lover must take the shot. He then says, but despite the dire situation, hope is not lost. The chorus is sung once more, and the song ends with these words. What happens next is up to the audience's imagination.
As the last ship sails and the moon fades away from Lock Diamond Bay.
Black Diamond Bay follows and offers a unique wrinkle in the album's story. The song's namesake is the setting, a small fictional island. The song omnisciently tells a story through several characters, like a gambler, a desk clerk, a Greek, a soldier, and others. Each stanza of lyrics is a vignette happening somewhere on the island, but each ends in an ominous fashion. At the penultimate stanza, we find out the reason for the ominous endings. A volcano has erupted, destroying everything and everyone on the island, and each of the characters' actions are made entirely futile. A gambler wins big, but cannot take it past death. The Greek hangs from a chandelier, a woman prays, the sun goes down, and the music plays on Black Diamond Bay. At this point, it is pertinent to bring up the music. The instrumentation of the song has a bouncy rhythm yet a sorrowful violin accompaniment. The music does not fully support the gravity of the story and seems to be apathetic about how serious it is, but at the end this is shown to be the point. The last stanza is sung from the narrator's perspective for the first time in the song. He says that he's watching television and viewing the destruction of Black Diamond Bay on the 7 o'clock news. He remarks that it doesn't seem like much was happening, so he turns off the TV and goes to get a beer. But the last lines sum up the theme of the song.
And there's really nothing anyone can say. And I never did plan to go anyway to Black Diamond Bay.
In a song entirely about futility, these last lines ensure that the point has been made. But by now the question is, why on an album about desire is there a song with this theme? I believe it is to reinforce a concept from the last song on side 1, Oh Sister. The final lines of that song remind the audience that your time is limited and that it could last for a long time or end immediately. This song is a devastating example of that concept, and the futility of the character's actions only make it more tragic. The song shows that our desires can only take us so far, as our time can always come to an end.
Sarah, Sarah, glamorous nymph with an arrow and bow.
Finally, at the end, we've seen outlaws, beautiful locales, worldly stories, and a globe-trotting adventure. And at the end of this journey, Bob Dylan returns to his true desire, the love of his life. This song's lyrics are a touching ode to his wife Sarah, and for a rare moment in his catalog up until this point, he sings from his own perspective. There's no character, no persona, just Dylan. There's no cryptic lyrics, no grand allusions, just devotional words. There's no grand production or overdubs. The whole song was recorded in one take with Sarah watching in the recording studio. Musically, the song is a bit more understated than the previous songs on the album, with just Dylan's vocals, guitar and harmonica, violin, bass and drums. During this album, the violin takes the place that the harmonica would typically occupy. But in this final song, the harmonica reasserts itself as Dylan's second voice, almost like the return to his desire made him rediscover part of his identity. Throughout his discography, Dylan rarely displayed such a personal side in his songs, but when he did, it was always meaningful. And as the sun sets on this wonderful ballad, the album draws to a close. I believe this album to have one of the best and most well-chosen titles in all popular music. This album is a grand personification of the universal feeling of desire. This album has an incredible ability to tap into our conscious or subconscious desires, whether it be the desire for adventure, the desire for justice, the desire for forgiveness, the desire for love, among many others. These desires are the lifeblood of the human spirit, and we are all guided by them, and we're all waiting to see where our desire guides us next.
I came to a high place of darkness and light, dividing a rim to the center of a town. I hitched up my pony to a post on the right, went into a laundry to wash my clothes down. A man in the corner approached me for a match. I knew right away he was not ordinary. He said, "Are you looking for something easy to catch?" I said, "I got no money." He said, "That ain't necessary." I gave him my blanket and he gave me his word. I said, where are we going? He said, we live at the Fourth. I said, that's the best news that I've ever heard. I was thinking about turquoise, I was thinking about gold, I was thinking about diamonds and the world's biggest necklace as we rode through the canyons, through the devilish cold. I was thinking about Isis, how she thought I was so reckless. Now she told me that one day we'd meet up again, and things would be different the next time we wed. If I could hang on and just be her friend. I still can't remember all the best things she said. We came to the pyramids all embedded in ice. He said, there's a body I'm trying to find. If I carry it out, it'll bring a good price. It was then that I knew what he had on his mind. The wind, it was howling, and the snow was outrageous. We chopped through the night, and we chopped through the dawn. When he died, I was hoping that it wasn't contagious, but I made up my mind that I had to go on. I broke into the tomb, but the casket was empty. There was no jewels, no nothing. I felt I'd been had. When I saw that my partner was just being friendly, when I took up his offer, I must have been mad. I picked up his body and I dragged him inside. Threw him down the hole, but I put back the cover. I said a quick prayer and I felt satisfied. Then I wrote back to find Isis just to tell her I love her. She was there in the meadow where the creek used to rise, blinded by sleep and in need of a bed. I came from the east with the sun in my eyes. I kissed her one time, then I rode on ahead. She said, where you been? I said, no place special. She said, you look different. I said, well, I guess. She said, you've been gone. I said, that's only natural. She said, you gonna stay? I said, if you want me to, yeah. Child, what drives me to you is what drives me insane. I still can't remember the way that you smiled on the fifth day